Early this morning, Libya's Prime Minister Ali Zidane was kidnapped from a luxury hotel in Tripoli, only to be released several hours later. Around 100 men said to be part of the semi-autonomous militias that serve as the country's police surrounded his hotel and removed the Prime Minister at gunpoint. The kidnapping appears to be in retaliation for Zidane's supposed prior knowledge of the U.S. capture of an al-Qaeda leader, Abu Anas al-Libi, this past weekend in Libya. Joining me now to sort all this out is NBC's chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel. Richard, this is pretty extraordinary. We know from the Benghazi experience that these militias are semi-official and semi-autonomous. But how did this all take place, and why did they release him?
This is actually a pro-government militia, although that doesn't seem obvious when you hear that it was a pro-government militia that is actually taking custody of a senior government official, the prime minister. But this is a militia that was deputized by the government to fight corruption, to impose law and order. There is still a lot of chaos in Libya, so the government, which is weak, uses these groups almost like, I think of them like Texas Rangers or something like cowboys in the 1880s, where you have a group that's deputized. And are they official forces, or are they outlaws, or are they somewhere in between? And in this case, they're somewhere in between, and they take their job very seriously. And this morning, around 4 o'clock, they surrounded the Corinthian Hotel, which is right in downtown Tripoli. They went inside, heavily armed. The Prime Minister's security contingency had about 10 bodyguards, just backed off, didn't want to get into a gunfight. And these 100 to 150 gunmen took him to their vehicles, which were marked with the logo of the militia group, and they drove him off back to their headquarters and gave him a serious warning on corruption and on prior knowledge, so we have been told, of this U.S. military snatch and grab operation over the weekend that many Libyans were angry about. And then they released him. They released him because some of his bodyguards and relatives and supporters went to their headquarters, were firing guns up into the air, and it could have escalated a lot further. So no one was killed in this incident, but had it gone on a lot further, you would have had militia on militia violence to try and have him freed.
And it's certainly a perfect metaphor for the fact that this is a failed state, a failed government, and that after the war we still have a lot of work to do, or they have a lot of work to do in Libya.
Well, look at what we've learned about Libya just in the past few days. You had an accused senior al-Qaeda member living more or less openly there for the last 2 years, the person who was snatched by U.S. Special Operations Forces. You have U.S. Special Operations Forces conducting autonomous or autonomous with a slight tip-off raids in the country. And then you have militia groups that are so bold and autonomous that they feel justified in abducting, threatening, and then releasing the Prime Minister.
Pretty worrying stuff. Thank you very much. All this time after that war, with everything that was sacrificed by all sides in that war, we have this situation.
The problem was it was never stabilized afterwards. They kept the guns, the militias never went home, and the rebels are still fighting that war like rebels. That's been the fundamental problem. No disarmament, Richard, no reconciliation.
What really was not revealed at the time because of covert operations and security was that the original reason for the Benghazi outpost, the real outpost, the target, was a CIA operation to disarm the rebels, under which there was diplomatic cover by that State Department consulate. And that was the Benghazi operation, which, of course, led to such tragedy on September 11th a year ago.
I've spoken to people who said that the United States helped NATO, and this was a NATO operation to get rid of Gaddafi, to carry out airstrikes, but they didn't ever send people there on the ground, large numbers or even relatively small numbers, to try and disarm the force. There was this incredible desire to not have boots on the ground, that we wanted to change the regime with airstrikes and coordination, but that the idea of having even a small number of boots on the ground was such a red line that no force went in to try and collect these weapons and establish a post-collapse of Gaddafi system. And we're still living in we're still paying for the results of that.
Richard Engel, thank you so much. Thanks for being with us today.